Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Just going to give things a minute for folks to come on in. Uh, but we're really happy to have you. While we're giving time for everyone to get into the Zoom room, would love to hear who's here, what you want to learn about. If you have any questions out the jump, but just introduce yourself. If you're representing an org, let us know what that org is. If you are want to tell us where you're zooming in from, we always love to hear about that. Introduce yourselves in the chat. We'd love to find out who's here. We're just going to wait a minute longer before we get started to let folks come on in, and we're just going to let everybody introduce themselves first. Deidre from Portland, Oregon. Hey, from all the way across the country. You guys are staying cool this week while the East Coast bakes. Jealous. Hi, AJ. Hi, Lydia. Right here in Boston, Massachusetts, where I am. Jennifer, parody songs about political topics under the handle Parody and Blue, running for State House in Swanee, Georgia. Jennifer, so cool. So glad you're here. Hi, Peyton. Hi, Roger from Washington, Missouri. Amazing. All right, keep the introductions coming, and I'm going to, while you're doing that, introduce, educate us and myself, and then we're going to get into it because I keep this a tight hour. We will have you out at 8:30. That is our promise to you. My name is Jacqueline Friedman. I'm the founder and executive director of Educate Us. At Educate Us, we are dedicated to building a majority for sex education around this country, not just for people telling pollsters they support it, but people ready to take action for sex education. And you are at No Means No with a KNOW, which is our monthly series of sessions where we learn about how to be better advocates for sex education. We learn about a topic or advocacy tool that we will make us better advocates for sex education. We hold these once a month. They are always free to you to attend, but they are not free to produce. So if you appreciate it, we'd love it if you make even a small donation, $5, $10. AJ, who's our program assistant, is going to drop a link in the chat. And that really helps us continue to produce this kind of programming for you all. So we appreciate you being here. So I'm going to introduce our fantastic guests in just a second. Um, and they're going to have a little bit of a presentation, and then I'm going to talk with them and ask them some questions. And then you're going to get a chance to talk with them and ask them some questions. When you have questions, you do not have to wait. Go on over to where it says, mine says more with the three dots now. The Q&A doesn't show up immediately. If you don't see the Q&A and the little icons below, just click on the little more button and you'll see the Q&A there. That's where you want to put your questions. If you put them in the chat, they're much harder for us to keep track of and we can miss them. So we really focus on the questions that get put in the Q&A box. Chat with each other in the chat box, ask us questions in the Q&A box. Everyone got that? I'm going to assume you said yes. So with that said, I can't wait to get into Laughtivism, which is one of the more fun topics we've gotten to talk about recently. So I'm really enthused about getting into it. And to talk about it, we have with us our brand new director of organizing here at Educate Us, Becca Litt, who comes to us by way of Jews for Racial and Economic Justice and also Indivisible and lots of other great orgs. And we also have Gabby Rodriguez from Advocates for Youth. And I'm going to just turn it over to the two of you to introduce yourselves and let me know when you want me to put the slides on the screen.
Great. Thanks so much, Jacqueline. As Jacqueline said, I'm Becca. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Brooklyn. I have about 10 or so years of experience organizing big and small organizations from advocacy and also doing political campaigns as well. And I love the topic of Laughtivism. I've been telling Jacqueline about this from the jump, and I'm really excited to get into it. And Gabby, do you want to go next?
For sure. I'm Gabby Rodriguez from Advocates for Youth. My pronouns are she, her, aya. And just a quick about Advocates for Youth. We partner with young people and their adult allies to champion youth rights to bodily autonomy and build power to transform policies, programs, and systems to secure sexual health and equity for all youth. And I'm super excited to talk about Laughtivism. I am also 10 years in the game, and just excited to talk about what I've done, what young people are doing, and how we can bring a smile to the work that we're doing.
And a lot of Laughtivism recently has related to the basketball game. And I just want to say that I am from Brooklyn and Gabby is from San Antonio. So we have a little bit of a rivalry going right now, but we decided that we will get along for the sake of this call.
We've
Uh,
done this in planning without hanging up on each other, and that was
yeah,
in the middle of finals, so we're really proud of us.
indeed, indeed. So yeah, if Jacqueline can, if you can share the slides, that would be great. Great. So we want you from this hour to learn to love Laughtivism and how to use satire. We want you to use satire, silliness, and creative disruption to win real change for sex ed, for any other issue that you're working on, but obviously this is more related to sex ed. There's a lot of shit going on in the world, and life is hard. And so this is a way to get involved in activism that doesn't feel so hard sometimes and so deep. Not that we shouldn't be focusing on the hard and deep stuff, but it's a way to make it a little more enjoyable, which we all need right now. So if you can go to the next slide. Laughtivism is the strategic use of both humor and also mocking by movements all around the world, actually, in order to undermine authority of opponents and also to build credibility, to break fear, and also to get people to actually care to reach target audiences. And so we want to make sure that we're doing this in all different, I mean, there are no off years, but in election seasons, in non-election seasons, you can do it on in both and all ways. Um, that is not to say if you're doing it for election season that you should not be knocking doors or that you should not be making phone calls. Of course, you should be doing those things. And we're finding that this is a layer on the cake of doing it as well, of getting people elected as well, and we can go into the details of that more. But even if you're not doing it in electoral ways, you can do it from an advocacy perspective. So, why does Laughtivism work? Well, first of all, I don't know if you've ever been nervous or scared. You probably have because you're a human. And so humor actually melts fear. And that's just a psychological fact. Fear is the fuel that authoritarians like MAGA Republicans or like people who don't want to teach sex ed feed on. And there's nothing that breaks that fear better than a joke or a funny visual or something that's going to make you laugh. And it also makes you and all the people you're doing with this, your group, really cool. And who doesn't want to be cool? Your movement, it will help them to grow because you're the ones that are doing this funny thing, but also important thing, because it actually relates back to the ultimate goal and also makes something funny. And then humor, and it also creates a really big dilemma. This one's my favorite for your opponent, because if they react, they look kind of stupid. But if they don't, other people will join in on the mocking and it will go on from there. So either way, we win. And that's one of my favorite things about it. So here are some uh, examples. The earliest example that I can find that I've done through my research is Milosevic, the regime ruling over Serbia and Yugoslavia for about 13 years. They were maintaining control through, like, as you may know, arbitrary arrests and murders of avid opponents. And in 2000, or around 2000, the government initiative to support agriculture, it involved placing boxes in public places and asking people to donate coins for sowing and planting crops. And so in response, this group called OPAR, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but OPAR arranged its own collection called Coins for a Change. And basically they had this big barrel, as you can see, with a photo of Milosevic. And people could donate a coin and then get to like hit the stick with the barrel, hit the barrel with the stick. And at one point it said, like, you know, if you have didn't have money because of his politics, they should hit the barrel twice. And actually the police had to remove the barrel, but so what they stated in a press release is that the police actually arrested the barrel as opposed to a person, and claimed that it was actually a huge success because they collected enough money for his retirement. And so this actually worked because there was no space for any reaction. If the police didn't take away the barrel, they would be seen as like weak and ineffective. But if they when they did remove it, they could continue making the joke. And so whatever the regime did, they lost. Um, and then another example is, okay, I'm really sorry all to have to make you. Basically, in 2022, Fetterman, we thought he was going to be successful and actually effective. And I'm sorry to say, and me especially, and I'll explain in a minute that did not happen. But let's pretend that it did, or that it would be. The Fetterman campaign, when he was running against Dr. Oz back in 2022, got Snooki of Jersey Shore fame to actually do a video cameo, asking Dr. Oz to come back to New Jersey, where he's from. And so we don't really have time to play the whole video, but we can definitely put it in the links moving forward. And basically, it got like millions of views, and it was a really, really powerful Laughtivism tactic because it actually felt sincere, but people didn't know that he didn't live in Pennsylvania. So this actually helped him to help Fetterman to get more attention. And then the reason why I'm saying I apologize is because the same campaign when I worked at Indivisible, there were groups in rural Pennsylvania that worked to basically dress up as broccoli, as you can see, based on the Dr. Oz comment about crudité, which Pennsylvania people don't say; they say veggie trays. So um, there was a whole campaign where they dressed up as broccoli and followed Dr. Oz literally everywhere. But as you can see, the middle sign says defend choice, so there was an element of a serious element to it as well, which made it all the more powerful. One thing that we want to just talk about in terms of best practices, and this is mostly from Yes Man, who are sort of the pioneers of this model. It has to evoke a reaction in your audience by pushing them out of their comfort zone. No one necessarily likes to be pushed out of their comfort zone, but it is really important that it kind of goes that little extra mile that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, in order to do it, and in order to get it to actually people to pay attention. And also, if you don't find it funny, then other people are not going to find it funny. So you have to find it funny first and really make sure that there is actually some strong emotion. Also, it has to be in the news, or it should be in the news around that time, because news is moving so fast, as we know. So if it's like a week later, people might not remember it unless it's an escalating campaign. Um, and one thing I was really proud of with the broccoli veggie thing is that, yeah, it ended up like, not humble brag, it ended up in the New York Times for a little bit. What I was really proud of was not that, it was actually the local press that it got. So we want to make sure that even local press is able to follow along with something that is the more specific, the better. Next slide. Just lastly, just things to keep in mind, and I have a lot of other tools, but for the sake of time, we want to make sure to not accidentally make the enemy's point for them or give the enemy too much obvious fuel. So, Jacqueline and I talk a lot about not like giving too much attention to the enemy, by uplifting their posts. And it's really true. If you're even like just trying to get their ideas, that you're still undermining your target. You don't want to adopt their voice. You need to actually have your own voice, but like put them in the backseat, basically. And then you want to make sure that your project reveals something false in the news or highlights something that's underreported. It isn't just about something everyone that already knows. It has to be something that people sort of know about, but if it's like kind of old news at this point, as I said, like people aren't going to really focus on it. And then we should make sure that we're revealing truths. We're not just building, for lack of a better word, fake news. We're going to really make sure that we're focused on our opposition and not creating fake stories or ways that that MAGA could come back to us, by telling us that we're wrong or that we don't know what we're talking about. We're not lobbyists. We don't want to do that. So we're not trying to change their minds. We're actually trying to gather this as content and mainly focus on allowing the radicals to speak for themselves, right-wing radicals, and shining a light on their extremism. And I'm going to pass it over to Gabby now, who's
Hey,
going to talk
every-
about, sorry, sex education.
Hey everyone. So actually, with my slide here, I'm gonna talk about some advocacy, what that may look like for folks, and then how accessible Laughtivism can be for you, like even when you're out protesting and what that looks like. So first, I've got this like first corner over here that has like me in my cultural garb, cultural regalia. That is me in my mariachi traje. And talking about what's going on in South Texas as a Latina, as a Chicana, and what's going on in the world. So that's me at a pretty young age. I think I'm like maybe 15 or 16 there. And I think it's really important to talk about this term Laughtivism and how Becca was talking about how some of the earliest things that she can find about it was not that long ago. But I want to talk about some cultural points, especially in the Latino community, is Laughtivism and that absurdity of bringing attention to your point is something that is kind of ingrained in the culture that I grew up in, with piñatas of political figures, with the people that you're insulting, whether that being and insulting in a way to criticize for better is something that's been ingrained in my culture since like the minute I was born. And so I think like that absurdity is kind of that fun and that point that you can use to make it. So these are some photos of me doing some traditional advocacy. And then we move over to the side where I've got my middle finger up, censored for everyone, about how this was Hillsborough Baptist Church, and my friends and I decided that we were going to dress like mermaids during Pride and follow them around with our middle fingers every time somebody was taking a picture of their signs, so that way they know that the folks around us didn't believe in what they were preaching. And then further, my absurdity with my signs, walking around fighting for my rights. I think that that was drawing the attention. There was photos everywhere, and that was what was getting to our local politicians at the time when I lived in New Orleans, Louisiana. We were just trying our best to get eyes on us to know that we were young people upset about what was going on and that draw attention that young folks are mad. So if you love Greece, that's where my quote is on the side. And I think that my smiley face censors some, but you can draw some blanks on what's going on there. And I'll pass it back to you, Becca.
Oh, I think Jacqueline's gonna ask us some questions. I
Yeah,
love looking.
I think that was a great warm up. And I have some questions. And then if you all have questions that you want to ask Gabby and Becca about how you can apply this to your work and other kinds of questions about what they're presenting on, put them in the Q&A. And we will get to them after I get first crack as host privilege. So let's get into it. We're a sex ed advocacy organization. Um, what are some ideas for how we could bring more Laughtivism to advocating and organizing for sex education?
I think predominantly asking young folks like that. I know that that's like sounds really general, but young folks are the ones that are on TikTok and know what's trending. And we are also surrounded by a time when politics is kind of being swayed by comedians. Why can't young folks be funny if we have to hear Tony Hinchcliffe and Joe Rogan be funny? So I think giving young folks that platform that this is your space to be just as funny as they are to get our point across because they're motivated is really something that we can do. And meet them where they're at. They are hearing these comedians, but they care about things. So let's bring those two together. So let's lead with young folks.
Yeah, I think also I just have some ideas that I thought of. One being basically a like outside of a state capital of a Republican legislature, you could who like clearly don't understand the science of pregnancy, you could promote a fake event for condom burning to highlight Republicans, restriction of contraceptives, or you could, in response to the MAGA attacks on schools, you could host a back to school book giveaway that has sex ed in it that we want to be promoting. So I think there are different ways that you can kind of find what people are talking about, but making sure that, yeah, what Gabby was talking about in terms of our youth going to be paying attention because that's usually how things are going to be lifted up at this point. We definitely saw that with Mayor Mamdani's campaign as well. A really one that yeah. So I think that those are two really good things. And then again, meeting people where they're at, especially when it comes to sex ed and getting really sexy about that
We
is
did a fundraiser a few years ago for Educate Us, where if you became a monthly donor, we would send Heather Corinna's book SEX, which is a really great sex ed book, to the elected official of your choice who needed it the most. Um, People got real creative. It was really fun. We were actually going to do like a delivery in person on the hill, but I forget what happened, but something came up and we weren't able to do it. But I wish that I still wish we had been able to do that.
I mean, another really good example is like when Trump was elected the first time and Mike Pence was his vice president, a lot of people like donated to Planned Parenthood in honor of Mike Pence, right? So he was getting thousands upon maybe millions of, because you have to say that it's in honor of that person. You have to get letters back. So he was getting letter after letter to his home about donations for Planned Parenthood.
And
I
then
love that.
one thing I would say too is like if you're working within a system that's really strict, that its confines are like you have to do it some certain way, pointing out the absurdity of that is a really good way to start with your like Laughtivism and how to move forward. So one idea or example that you can use like in a school setting with young folks leading the way would be like there's still schools that have young folks walk around with an egg or with a bag of flour or with a baby on their campus for a week, and that's probably about the most sex ed they may get. But they don't get to learn about the beforehand of protecting themselves of before a baby comes or the sex ed around that. So maybe before that week, they walk around with an absurd giant question mark because they don't get to know anything before walking around with that baby. And working within the confines of that system, but doing something crazy that they're not expecting is kind of how you can point out how absurd it is. And then I can give a real life example of something similar working with Laughtivism in my life, which is how I got invited to this talk today. I told Becca all about it in a meeting, which was when I was a young student on Loyola's campus. We were trying to get condoms on our campus, like provided by the campus. Loyola's a Catholic university. I was trying really hard to like get my friends condoms, get condoms at all on our campus, and it was like impossible to find. But Tulane was right across the street and they had them there, but we had to pay. And we were like, hey, it's not fair that we can't get them for free on our campus, but students there can get it. And we finally talked to our school. They had some really convoluted reason of they can't have it on our campus because it's Catholic, but not really. It's just that they didn't want to pay for other birth control on campus if they allowed condoms. So we pointed out how crazy that was, and we created the condom fairies. So we, on purpose, would walk around campus giving condoms in our little fairy regalia, making sure people know that there's condoms on campus for free, even if the school isn't providing them. And then we were able to convince students on every single floor of every dorm that was on our campus for one person to have free condoms that like folks can get to. I've been off campus for a minute because now I'm 28, but I've heard that there's still free condoms on campus dorms like every now and then, and that they're still fighting the school actively till this day to get more coverage on birth control. But we were pointing out how absurd it was, and they kind of just let us keep going. So it was really cool for us, and that was a win in a southern state for us of this is as far as we got, but it was a big win for us.
That's awesome. AJ, there was a question about getting a replay, and I just want to see if AJ, you can put the YouTube link in the chat. Thank you. I had the egg when I grew up in the 80s, and now I'm like thinking about all kinds of ways we could have subverted the egg because I still think about that experience and how much I hated it. Um, yeah, I can't believe, I mean, I can, but also can't believe that they're still doing it. Um, what are some ways that you see people going wrong when they try to use Laughtivism? Like, what are the pitfalls you want people to not fall into?
I would say focusing too much on like the big laugh. So the punching down is like we're not trying to exclude people and bringing attention to a point. So that's like you may be talking about Trump having like he's fat and has loose skin, but like then you're alienating like folks that are plus size in your community. Like people are gonna see that may not be Trump. And that's gonna be my example for now, just a large one. But I just think that like that's our language and like what we do is let's point attention to their pitfalls of what they're doing wrong and how absurd they are, rather than like their character of what they're choosing to do rather than things they can't control.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think good.
sorry, go ahead, Becca.
Oh, I just think that's spot on. I think basically not trying to prove their point for them. We want to make sure that we're getting our point across about how absurd the other side is and how ridiculous they are being. And then also just to make sure that it's still relevant. As I was saying before, it's like if you're talking about something that happened even maybe a month ago, it might not be as relevant unless it's like an escalating campaign that's sort of still going on. But you want to make sure that it's really relevant. Because I found that when it's not relevant, people don't laugh. And then it's not laughed with.
Yeah, I hate those fat jokes about Trump. Like it's there are so many things to make fun of about Trump. Like, let's not make fun of fat people. All you're really doing is saying you think fat people are bad. And we can hear you. Disability, absolutely. A lot of different differences. We can inadvertently wind up punching down when we're trying to punch up, and we need to like definitely attend to sort of whether somebody is catching strays when and what making sure that all the punches are landing on the target and not other people. Um, okay, so I think the number one hesitation I hear from people about using Laughtivism kind of tactics that kind of humiliate powerful men, it's mostly men, let's be honest, uh, by laughing at them is that it'll make them lash out, right? That it'll be counterproductive because it's going to make them feel so humiliated that they're going to lash out and do something worse. Like, how do you think about that?
I say let them lash out. First of all, I don't think that that's true. But even if that is true, like then that just makes them look even worse and makes the situation, it makes us seem like the more reasonable, credible ones. And I just think that that's a way of saying that we shouldn't do something without even trying. It reminds me, this is sort of enough. It reminds me of when I was on the Elizabeth Warren campaign and people said they wouldn't vote for a woman because their uncle wouldn't vote for a woman. Well, have you even tried? Like, so it just seems like such an excuse, and I I think try it. Try them.
I would say the right wing is not above using what they think is fun. They're really bad at memes. Like, first of all, we know that's a deficit that they have on that side, right? Like, let's just be so real. Like, they don't have this. So, like, why would we know they have a weakness there? Why would we not jump up with like, we know the funniest person you know is a woman. Like, why not us in this field and this like what we're doing to make the world better, like why would we not bring laughter to that? They're laughing and punching down. Why can't we fight that back with punching up? So I think that laughter is super important. I think that the fear of them lashing out is I understand it's real, but I also think that the same men lash out if you breathe too loud, if you go buy a pad at the store, if you go proudly say that you're part of the LGBTQ community. Like there is nothing that these people will not lash out about anyway. So why are
Yeah.
we limiting ourselves on what is something that can be effective and bring joy and point out that it's absurd what we're going through, that we're letting the patriarchy and white supremacy kind of lead. Like, why are we letting that fear stop us? Like, let's keep going.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like they're already gonna do their worst. Like they really are. And there's no placating them. I've quoted this in one of these sessions before, but the the political dissident, Russian political dissident and writer M. Gessin wrote an op-ed about a year and a half ago in which they talked about their experiences in Russia and that people who tried to placate or play along with the government when Putin was ascendant in order to protect their program, their funding, or like, like whatever, in order to sort of play it safe and not draw attention. Um, all of the stuff they were trying to protect got targeted in the long run anyway. And when we capitulate to them in advance, we actually make them more powerful and it makes them easier at targeting us, right? So like if we try and play small so they won't notice us, all that does is actually let them get bigger and take up more space. So I couldn't agree with that more. I know it feels scary, but the reality is if enough of us do it, then there's nothing they can do, right? Like it's when there's not enough of us, and but somebody has to start, right? I mean, not that people haven't started, but like it takes all of us sticking our necks out to get out of the mess we're in for sure. And why not do it in a fun way? I agree, like they don't have this kind of cool because as Gabby said, they punch down. Like their humor is punching down. And fundamentally, punching down humor is not funny. Like, let's be real. Let's be so real. Like the reason that all those like Dave Chappelle anti-trans jokes aren't funny is not just because they are hateful, although they are hateful, but because they are hateful, they're just not funny, right? Like they're taking like the shape of a joke, but like they're just expressing something hateful. And so like a I think I saw comedy like journalism should afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted, right? And when they punch down and try and use the other way, they're just genuinely not funny. Just in the same way that they clearly do not understand what's fun about a state fair, right? Like they couldn't be less interested in what brings people joy and happiness, because that's the opposite of their project. So let's use the stuff that we got that makes us seem different than them, like makes it clear to other people why we're the side they want to be on. And like that's the side that feels fun to be on, man.
And I also want to highlight like their safety too and being so absurd because that and that sounds funny, but what I'm saying is like I'll use a recent example in the last year, which was like the protests in Minnesota recently that were anti-ICE protests, and folks were out there in their big blow-up suits. And ICE looks really funny attacking a guy dressed like Yoshi. Like that absurdity can also protect you, and that's a part of this activism is like you look funny being harassed by a group of broccoli. Are you really being harassed? Are you being like joked about by a group of broccoli? Like there's I think like that's part of the this safety of we're not trying to attack you, we're trying to meet you at the absurd because this is crazy. And I think
It
that's
makes
okay
it,
to name that.
you're right, so much harder for them to say like these people are scary, right? When we're dressed in inflatable frog costumes.
Yeah, and I think don't what you were saying, Jacqueline, about don't obey in advance is really important because if we're always too timid to get started, then nothing is going to happen. So we need to really be the brave ones and actually put ourselves out there as much as we do feel, even if we are just trying to get out of our comfort zone one little inch, to do these things. And obviously to do them as a group makes you even stronger and makes it a little less scary to do by yourself than by yourself.
All right, I'm gonna go to the audience. You all have not asked a single question of our panelists, and we want to know what your questions are, or maybe you have ideas that you want to run by them and help us riff on, like that you're thinking about. We'd love to workshop them on the room, but like this session is short. If you guys don't ask questions, a big part of No Means No is that we can learn together and there's time for interaction. So don't be shy. Put your questions in the chat, even if it's something that just that you want to be like. I've been thinking about doing this. Like, what do you think about it? And we can maybe help you develop your own Laughtivism ideas. Um, yeah. What do you think about? I'm stuck on thinking about the egg, right? Can we go back to the egg? So, for folks who don't know, in some schools, they make you, sometimes it's just the girls, I believe it was just the girls in my high school, carry around an egg for a week in a little basket to like show how much responsibility is to take care of a baby. I know that doesn't make any sense, but that is true. That is what they do. And in my school, the boys were encouraged to try and steal them from us, which I don't know what lesson that is supposed to teach us. I grew up in New Jersey, but it was the 80s. I hope they don't do this in many schools in New Jersey now. But um, what would you do? What would be a great Laughtivism approach to showing how absurd the egg exercise is?
They could write on the egg, like with like what how did I get here? Where did they come from? Chicken or the egg? Like the egg is a perfect thing to write on. And I put it in the chat, but I went to school to a private school in South Texas, so they just gave us an egg one day and was like, keep it for a week and like gave us no context. So like and that was not that long ago. I graduated in 2015, so like not too long ago that they were having me do that. So I just wanted to put that out there.
How can we show or quote the ridiculous claims the opposition says without repeating misinformation? That's a great question, because we know that when you repeat their claims, it actually reinforces them in people's brains. So yeah, I turn that over to you. Like, what are the ways if somebody has said or claimed something that's false or ridiculously misinformed, how would you highlight that it's false or misinformed without repeating the information?
I think you have to repeat what's true. So
Yeah.
you take what they're saying, you don't repeat exactly what they said because again, you don't want to highlight the misinformation, but you repeat what the actual truth of it is and then make it absurd for show how absurd it is that anyone would believe the lie.
Yeah. I've got a question in the Q&A. We're going to prioritize questions that are coming in the Q&A box. I can see some people saying things in the chat. We really prefer them in the Q&A. It's easier for us. You may have touched on this already, but how have you handled people on your side and the opposing side misconstruing or not getting your joke?
That's a good question. And this is when I'm gonna lean on us heavy to be comedians and let it roll. Sometimes you dud, and that's okay. But I also think like when you're leaning heavy into laughtivism and organizing in general, it's kind of like frequency is what gets you those folks. So if your joke doesn't hit the first time or you find out it's offensive, which is usually when I tell folks to stop a joke, is if you know you found out it's offensive, that's when you cut it. And then I follow that with if you found out it's not hitting, make your adjustments on why. So I'm gonna say if your joke doesn't hit and it's like, damn, we can try it again, but let's make our adjustments on why didn't it hit? Did I have to explain it and it took way too long and everybody's like, what the hell's going on? Or like what there's time to regroup. So I think that it's okay to bomb. And it's just like if you were a comedian, it's okay to bomb. Like it's
Every
okay to
comedian bombs, that's how they get better, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just
Um,
trying things really helps. And I think, and being afraid to mess up only so much because everyone does, as we just were saying, but also like you have to make sure that you are just out there as much as you can. So the more things you're trying, the more you know what sticks and what doesn't. So that's why it's just so important to keep trying and keep at it. The more determined you are, the better.
and also like have a sense of humor about yourself and your own work, right? Like if you try a thing and it bombs, or just like some people love it and some people don't, like, just like be like, you know, I always we have a saying in my household which is like you try things, sometimes they work, right? Like you can sometimes make a joke at your own expense in those instances and like keep it moving.
I
Um
also want to flag too,
yeah.
like there's always going to be a group of folks that think that you have to organize in a proper way, and that proper way is saying like yes ma'am, no ma'am, and showing up at the exact right time at the Capitol or whatever. And I fundamentally just disagree with that as a whole. Like that is there, I think there's multiple ways to organize. So your joke is not going to make everybody in your movement happy, everybody in your community, and I want you to know that now. There's going to be folks that are like no, we need to be serious. They can't take us serious and never listen to us again because we wore frog suits. So I love this, Jacqueline.
I bought this in New Orleans a couple of years ago, and because I love tacos so much, but it also is a good reminder of exactly what you're saying. You will never make everybody happy.
So I think that's when we've got to take a page from young people and be bold and kind of don't care what folks are thinking about you, because that's kind of that energy that you need when you're doing this kind of work.
And also be authentic because the more people can see if you're not, people know that when you're not yourself. And that obviously doesn't work a lot of times for candidates. It doesn't work a lot of times for advocates as well. So you need to show that like you are comfortable with messing up. You're also comfortable with doing, different things, and you're comfortable with not making everyone happy because then people will really think you're an authentic, true human being.
Yeah. And also that authenticity means like, and when it comes to humor, like it should crack you up first, right? Like if it doesn't make you laugh and the people you're collaborating with laugh, it does not make any sense to do it, right? Like and if it makes you all laugh and it doesn't hit, then like you at least made yourselves laugh, right? But if you like try something because it's going to make those people over there laugh, but it doesn't even make you laugh and then it doesn't hit, then everybody feels bad because it doesn't come from a place where you're amused by it. So like absolutely start by what cracks you and the people you work with up.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Basically, also, it doesn't have to make everyone laugh in the whole wide world or even the whole country. It can make people laugh. It should be about your target, right? So, like back to Pennsylvania with Scott Perry, we put up like wanted signs all over because he was indicted. And so that's not going to people are not going to really necessarily understand that. You might not all understand that because it's a little bit in the weeds, but the people there understood what they were talking about. Or if they didn't, they were like, Scott Perry, that's my representative. What is going on there? So you don't need to make it true, like funny for the whole country or the whole world. You need to make it funny for groups of people that you think will catch on and
The
understand.
people you're trying to reach. Like, think about who it is. Are you trying to get them to take action, or you're trying to sway them to vote a particular way, or whatever it is? The more crisply you can define your audience, the better your humor will be also. Yeah.
Because Becca and I mentioned basketball earlier, I'm gonna mention it again now, which is a good way to look at it too is like if you support a team and there's local fan shirts that make sense to your fan base, that's hilarious. But like if me in San Antonio see a Knicks shirt that says my what is it my mayor Muslim, like I'd be like that doesn't apply to me, like I don't get it. So I think that like that would be like your example there, if you wanted to compare it to something like, does this make the people of San Antonio laugh, does this make the people of Brooklyn laugh, then I think like that would be kind of like what you can compare it to. Like if it's that local, that's still okay.
Yeah. Because I agree. If you try and make things funny for literally everyone, they're probably going to wind up corny. And corny isn't funny.
If you've like ever been around middle schoolers and you try to say a word that they're saying right now, if I
No.
went 6'7" around a middle schooler, they know that's not authentic to me. I look very old, even though I'm in my 20s, and I know that's cringe. I gotta stop. So like I think that that for me is like kind of that bar too. I love working with young people because that'll be like my gauge of like, oh, maybe that's not the joke I need to tell.
I
Um,
will demonstrate this by telling on myself. A few months ago, I heard the term glaze, like on literally Amy Poehler's podcast. Like, so from another like she's literally my age. And I was like, oh, it sounds like it means like effusively praising someone. And I like said it in a staff meeting, and like AJ and our intern, who are both considerably younger, both were like, and then I learned it has sexual connotations, and and Amy Poehler is probably using it somewhat wrong also. So like, yeah, don't use what's not yours. I didn't know, in my defense, but it was a little embarrassing. Okay, we have another question. It's not directly about Laughtivism, but it's about working with young people. Harriet's asking, I'm embarrassed to ask this because I'm an elder, an identity that young people have bestowed upon me. I am so not clued into most of the things which you're referring to, although I remember the egg on the pillow. That was too radical for my high school. Wow. What is a good way to engage with youth and center youth voices while not diminishing myself as an elder? I love this question, Harriet. We actually had a session about this exact question for No Means No earlier this year that I'm going to ask AJ to put in the chat, but I would love to also hear Gabby and Becca's responses.
Do you mind if I go first, Becca?
Sure.
Okay, so I work with young people every day, and I've recently been migrating to not a young person anymore era. And I've learned that my favorite role when supporting them directly, so like for me, sex ed, I think young folks should be front and center because they're the ones who need it right now. Or like are getting cut out of the conversation of being able to have it right now. I'm already out of high school. So I like to say that I'm an accomplice. So let me be their accomplice. Let me center them and be their accomplice. How can I center you and make you reach that goal? So that's not diminishing your eldership because I think you have leadership and can guide there. But I think centering them and saying, I'm your accomplice to get your goal across, to get your needs met, is how I center them when their voice is heard first. So I like to lead with the people who are being affected. So that's the way that I do that.
I think it just speaks to the authenticity question. Like, if you are older, you don't act like you're younger, and if you're younger, you don't necessarily need to act like you're older. Like goes both ways, because people, as I said before, people can see right through that. But I think supporting people in how they're putting this on is fine, but to be authentic to your age, at least in
Awesome.
terms of.
Also, Harriet says, also, my daughter is 21 years old. She often worries what people will think, say, feel about her. However, I'm at a point where I don't care as much about what other people think, and that is so hard. And I'm way corny cringe. But Harriet, I just have to say, I don't know what your age is. I'm 54 years old. I'm definitely no longer what anyone would call young. But I think that cringe and corny are for to me are different things. Like cringe is actually just being sincere and vulnerable. And I think that we should all risk being cringe. Like I think that being criticized for being cringe should be a badge of fucking honor. And if you're not risking being cringe, you're not doing anything worth doing. So like when they say cringe, like that's them, that's a them problem and not a you problem. That's how I feel about cringe. I think corny comes from a place of sort of trying to appeal to everyone and therefore saying nothing. Yes, I may be cringe, but I'm free. Thank you, AJ. Yes, like so I think that corny and cringe I want to make a difference between those things. When I say corny, I mean the kind of humor that winds up on a really middle of the road sitcom that's sort of like nobody actually laughs out loud about at all. It's just sort of like, yeah, I can see that is in the shape of a joke. Because like they're trying to appeal to too many people at once. Um, yeah. Anyway, that's what I personally want to say about corny and cringe.
And I think
Um,
cringe has really like it's okay again depending on so for example Brad Lander who just won a congressional seat like did so many takes about him being a dad lander and like yeah it was kind of cringy but it was
Brad
authentic.
Lighter is so cringe, but I love him for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like authentic and I mean that's it's just an example and he was able to show that like yeah, I don't really get things, but I'm still that makes me funny in a way is because I'm doing dad jokes.
And I want to give us another perspective on cringe too, just another working with young folks perspective. When I was 13, I felt like I was the cringiest person around. I was following Justin Bieber in One Direction everywhere. Like I was writing I'm a believer on my forehead. Like that was the life I was living. That's cringe. But I was also the boldest I've ever been. So I think that if we're modeling being young people or following young people or being accomplices to young people, it's okay to lean into that cringe because I was the authentic believer 1D directioner, and that's when I was loud and crazy. And I think that that's like super important as an adult to keep in touch with being the cringe because that part is still authentic. So I think don't lean away from being cringe if that's true to who you feel and how you're being. But definitely lean away from the corny and the like if it's gonna be screenshot on a meme that they're gonna share on Truth Social, then like that's where I'd lean away. That's where I'm making my bars of like that's cringy to me. I'm gonna step away from that.
Yeah, I love that. It actually brings up something like I have had my share of like having opposition take my photo or screen cap or likeness and like post it all over their shit and make fun of me. And my feeling about that was always like I want to make sure it's a good picture. I want to make sure it's a picture I like when they're doing that, right? Like they should at least have a good picture of me. So like when you're thinking about cringe, when you're thinking about taking a risk with humor, like if they're gonna go after you, just like do it while you're having fun, right? Like do it while you're doing something that you feel good about, that you felt passionate about. Like they're gonna come after you one way or another. It might as well be for something that like feels great to you when you do it.
Joy is resistance. I know we hear that a lot. It comes from a beautiful poem. But joy is resistance. So like let's bring the laugh while we're resisting. I don't think there's a problem with that. There's joy in being cringe, there's joy in making people laugh. And there's joy in organizing with your people for change. So I think all of those things bringing together is part of the fight.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any other questions. Are there other questions, y'all? This is so much fun to think about. I'm still thinking about eggs and like what if the teacher's desk was like covered with eggs? Like who assign or like the principal or whoever's responsible for the curriculum or like what if they came in on the last day of the project and everyone was just eating scrambled eggs at their desk? Like I just feel like I'm still stuck on what I wish I'd done during the eggs. Anyway, Becca, I see you want to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say that Yes Man, who I mentioned in the presentation, and also Beautiful Trouble have a lot of really good suggestions that you could probably tailor towards sex education or whatever you're doing advocacy around. And I actually asked AJ to if I could put those links that they have in the chat, because you can, one thing that is, I will never say you should plagiarize, but in organizing, you should. Because um, that is the one exception, because like why reinvent the wheel when like people are doing things that are already funny? So use these ideas. Don't feel like you have to come up with your whole set of new ideas because these ones work, but just make it into your own authentic self and for the times that we're living in.
That's a perfect place to leave it. Becca and Gabby, thank you so much. Um, Next month we will be talking about with Equality Federation about their incredible groundbreaking research on trans narrative and organizing shifting. They've done a long study and found some really great ways for us to fight for trans rights that we're going to, including humor, I'm sure, that we're going to be learning about. And that info will be going out this week. The video of this will also be up on our YouTube channel this week. So we hope that you'll stay in touch with us and keep letting us know how we can help with your organizing. And also, as a reminder, if you've got something out of this, and you can slip us $5 or $10 in that donation link that I think Angie is going to leave one more time. That is how we keep going. So appreciate all of you. Keep fighting the good fight and having a great fucking time while you're doing it. And we'll see you next month. Bye, everyone.
Bye.